Are you tired of all the dating games, rules, and societal norms that make falling in love confusing and stressful?
Then join us as we ditch the script and empower you to establish healthy, conscious relationships.
This weekly podcast breaks down popular dating reality television and educates you on healthy versus toxic dating habits.
I'm Brianna, a licensed therapist.
And I'm Alex, a trauma-informed and certified narcissist recovery coach.
Are you ready to ditch the script?
Oh my God.
I love it.
Hold on.
Hey.
We
Ugh.
had a great air jam sesh.
Yeah, we played a couple different roles.
Yeah, we did.
Good for
We
us.
were all the members of the band.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
Bitches.
Yeah. I loved your singer. You were like,
Oh, yeah?
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like that.
Speaking of
What?
bands, let's tell everyone what you've been up to this weekend, how you are factoring this into your weekend.
I've been at Stagecoach, bitches. Yeah, I wasn't planning on going at all. And it's kind of funny because like when I used to dance for Disney, a group of us would go line dancing. So I started listening to country music because of the line dancing. Years later, being way removed from that scene, my girlfriend she goes to Stagecoach every year. This is like her 8th or 9th year. And this year though, she was going alone. And so literally Thursday night, it's like 11 o'clock and she's like, fuck it, I'm buying you a ticket and you're going with me. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, here we go.
Currently I have peppermint oil and some CBD THC like muscle relaxer balm all over my calves and feet because I have been cutting many rugs. And I've run into friends from Disney, so that's been so great, like people I used to perform with, so it's great like dancing together again. And today, apparently, I just literally, as we were hopping on to record, one of my other really good guy friends and his girlfriend is coming out to join us. So it's a party.
What kind of shoes are you wearing to these
My
functions?
Chucks. And today I'm wearing Nikes. Yeah, fuck the boots. No.
Yeah, fuck the okay, because I know that a lot of people are at Stagecoach, and I know that they're wearing like cowboy boots because aesthetic and like on brand. Yeah. However, it just doesn't feel like the most effective footwear for essentially what is like 12 to 16 hours of country music and dancing.
To each their own. Like I have gone to Stagecoach before in boots, and I will say the plus for that is like when you're walking from the lot or the Uber area to the actual venue, you go through a lot of gravel and dirt. So like it's nice because that shit doesn't get in your shoes. When you wear like Chucks or sneakers, you have a higher risk of like getting a rock in your shoe. But for me, like I'd rather deal with that than like the limited range of motion I get in a boot, especially if I'm dancing. So
priority
whatever.
Dancing over gravel walking.
Yeah, whatever. It's fine. We're going to be fine.
And how do you, okay, because sorry, this is such a random question, but I also have known Converses to not be super comfortable with a sweaty foot after dancing in the sun for many hours because the canvas can rub on the toenails. I've known people to have loose toenails afterwards.
Ouch.
Yeah,
I have
real
only gotten
story.
one blister and that's it.
Okay, amazing.
On the back of my foot, I threw a Band-Aid on that and I was fine. So
good to go.
#blessed. I'm not sure. Yeah. But we're good. Yeah. I'm having a good time. It's like, I won't lie. I feel like a little old only because I'm not as into the scene as I used to be. But I'm enjoying it for what I'm getting out of it, if that makes sense. You know what
makes
I mean?
perfect sense.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, what about you? Because you've also had a very active weekend.
Yeah.
What's going on in your life?
I was just in DC for the first time as an adult to visit a close friend of mine who has been out here, and she and I went to college together. I know you you said you were like, have a great wedding weekend. And I was like, I'll tell her later that I'm not there for
I literally thought you were out there for a wedding. I was like, yeah, isn't she there for a wedding? I don't know why in my mind I like made that.
Well, because it's like, when in doubt, assume the travel is for a wedding, you know,
or a baby,
or a baby. Yeah, I'm traveling a lot for babies these days, weddings, and then sometimes it's just like friendship tax.
We're the only single bitches. I
I
can't
know.
wait till I'm on a
Well,
plane for your wedding.
let's talk about how I hope that
We're
there's a wedding in
manifesting
my
that.
life. Yeah,
There
yeah.
will be.
Um, my friend
I
that I
got
just
dark there
visited,
for a second.
yeah, sure, just a little. My friend lives in DC. She's also like a single lady, so that was fun. We were in a stagecoach, but we did go to a bar Friday night, and like I definitely got my wiggles out.
Hell yeah. Love
Yeah,
it.
so that was really fun. I really enjoyed wiggling about in DC. DC's fun. It's beautiful. It's diverse. It's
Did you do the cherry
gorgeous. It's
blossoms?
clean.
Isn't the cherry blossom festival there?
I did not. The weather was bad, so we really kind of kept indoors. It was a very quick trip. Like I should have been on a plane at 8 a.m. this morning, but instead I was on a plane at 10:30 this morning. Um,
You
so
still
here
made
we
it.
are. Yeah, we just hopped off the jet,
We're
aka
flying.
a regular 747.
Yeah. I know. Someday maybe it'll be a private jet. We never know.
Yeah, or
We
maybe
never
it'll
know.
just be like my car driving across the
Yeah.
country because that's when
Podcasting
broke.
live from the Datchmobile.
Yeah, from the car. So that's what's happening, and I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to talk about Love Is Blind. Although, like, I'm trying to remember
So
what
excited to
happened.
talk about Love is Blind.
I am so excited
Yeah.
to talk about Love Is Blind. No, I am excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited. There's a lot to
Some
unpack.
shit happened these two episodes. We're
Yeah,
unpacking episodes 7 and 8 in case anyone is wondering. And
yeah.
wow, some shit gets toxic and
It's just
other shit
interesting.
gets more toxic. Yeah, I
Yeah, it's
know.
just interesting to see the different dynamics of what's going on, and not just the dynamics of the folks, like the couples, but like with their parents now that we're starting to get to introduce to them a little bit.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very, very interesting. All right, are
Betty
we ready
Betty.
to jump in and do it?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. So we start off this episode with Chelsea's dad coming straight away
Yeah.
into their digs.
Yeah.
And
And she was nervous, as we were
he
saying, and
was
then
tripping.
and he was fine.
He was so fine. He was like so supportive about it.
Yeah.
And, he said all the right things, which, if I'm being honest, there's a part of me that's like, are you saying all the right things? Because there's cameras in your face right now, you know?
Anyway.
Because it was like a little too good to be true. But if that's genuinely how he feels, amazed. If he's withholding things because he's on TV, not so amazed. But, we won't know for now.
Yeah.
The end. I don't have anything
Yeah.
else to say about it.
No, no. Nope.
Okay, moving
Okay,
on.
then we have Paul meeting Micah. I'm sorry, Micah meeting Paul's mom,
You got it.
and this got weird for me
Oh,
because
I cannot wait to hear your thoughts. Yes.
it
It got
got weird
so
for me
weird.
because just on the surface, like Paul's mom is very similar to Micah, and at first I was like, is it just because they look similar? And then I was like, oh no, they actually have very similar energy. Um, and then the two of them sort of identified with each other in the moments. There's a lot of this blind confidence from mom. I think mom was reassured because Micah seems so familiar to her, like maybe how she recognizes herself. And she sort of had this blind confidence of, oh, I'm so glad it's you, random girl who I'm actually just meeting for the very first time. She doesn't know anything about her, but because there's a likeness to her, she's like, we're good.
Yeah. I also I felt it was so awkward when she was like, I don't know how to say this, but I'm a paralegal and I looked you up and I know all this random facts about you.
Yeah,
I
that's
just was
right.
like, can we there was a part of me that's like, can you keep that shit to yourself?
I
Like
know.
it
And she was
just
trying to intimidate her a little.
I don't yeah, was it that or was it I don't know. I didn't know where it came from, but I just felt really uncomfortable watching it. I kind of was just like, all right, FBI agent, that's not really an FBI agent.
I have a Facebook too, lady. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt so weird. It just was like it was just too much. But Micah when his mom asked Micah about what did you like about Paul, and she starts to say I like his mindset and he grounds me, and then Micah goes on to say I really enjoyed meeting you and it makes me feel like we're going to have a fun life because they get along. I and like you said, mom is blindly supported. this relationship without really like knowing much about her or them as a union at all. Um, I don't have the best feeling about these two. That's all I'm going to say.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
I
I
just
feel
think
like this conversation was so like fluffy and frou-frou, and like for reality TV it's great because it's like, yay, a family that supports and gets along, but I don't think it's genuine.
it's so interesting because I actually can't totally put my finger on why I think that Paul
Yeah.
and Micah are not a good match, like not a prop like match that are going to make it. Some of it is just like there's so much information that I'm lacking. Like I'm lacking the information that supports why they're actually connecting. But
Other than, yeah.
but the thing is like because now we know that Micah is so similar, at least in some obvious ways, like on the surface ways to Paul's mom, I'm like, oh, this is just like an attachment theory showing itself
Exactly.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely agree for Paul's side of it. I don't think Micah likes Paul. I think she's full of shit.
Yeah. I
I
agree.
don't.
I think she's attracted to him,
Yeah.
and I think she's just possessive over him. You know how sometimes girls can sort of just get high on the fact that they have a boyfriend?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Where they're like, I have a boy. Like being in a couple can provide us a little bit of status in the world. It's fake, but it's like part of our social structure.
We feel like it. Yeah.
Um, yeah, we feel like it. And I think that Micah gives me a little bit of that where it's just like, everything's great. Yeah.
I just don't like the way she treats him.
Mm,
I think Paul is way more emotionally mature than Micah.
mm,
And
hmm.
it's something that in do we want to go to him meeting her friend Shelby, or do we want to wait for
Please.
that?
No,
Okay.
I want to go full Monty.
Full Monty. So this is where I see like several red flags come out. So first of all, I'm a huge believer in like you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I really do believe that. And so when Micah has these two girlfriends that are like, what are the words I want to use? Judgmental, um
Catty, petty.
catty, thank you, petty, yeah, like waiting to attack, like they I'm especially with the one gal Shelby, I'm really picking up that she's a girl that almost likes to instigate fights and drama, like that's the kind of
Mm.
vibe I'm getting.
And then it's sort of like, wow, they were so edgy. And it's like, you started that.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what's so like awareness is so huge. Like if we cannot realize first of all we're the common denominators of our own lives and experiences, like that's an issue. We're never going to know how to act, like the control and power we have over our own reality that we're currently existing and participating in. So that's one thing. And the other thing is like there's no way you're gonna like these girls are gonna be able to have successful friendships and relationships if they continue to treat each other and their friends partners this way, right? And so for me what I felt I saw, and I'm really, we might debate this because I'm curious to know what you thought. So
Hmm.
before, let me just try and provide a little bit of context. This is definitely your
Hmm.
strong suit over mine, so if you need to jump in to help, please do.
No, you
But
got it.
basically, Paul and Micah are meeting with Micah's friends Shelby, and I can't remember the other gal's name, have a couple drinks together, and then Paul, like Shelby starts to ask hard questions, like you realize you get to wake up next to Micah every day, like that's a privilege, like what did you draw, what was so great about Micah, why are you how serious are you, and she starts like asking all these questions, and then Micah blurts out at some point like she's easily angered, meaning like her friend is easily angered, and then Paul goes, I don't really care, and she was like, that's the
Hmm.
worst attitude to have, and he's like,
Hmm.
well, I'm not with her, like I'm with you and I care about you, but like I'm not, the fact that this girl's easily angered, like that's what he's trying to say. It's like it's not going to impact me, and he's like, she was like, well, you should care what she thinks about you. It just felt so icky and like confrontational and on it, very
Hmm.
emotionally immature, extremely on
Hmm.
both of their ends, Shelby and
Hmm.
Micah's. And
Hmm.
so when she gets condescending like this and kind of emasculating, like she doesn't have Paul's best interest in mind here at all, and her friend isn't asking questions that are like what kind of conflict have you guys worked through? Like, what do you feel are your strengths or weaknesses in it? Like, it didn't feel like a healthy, normal conversation around relationships. It very much felt like I'm trying to sniff you out. And here is why I feel this. And this is the part I'm curious to debate with you
Mm.
is I feel Shelby is jealous of Micah having this relationship and a cute guy who's successful and smart. And so when Paul walks away, because he ends up excusing himself because this conversation gets a little intense and awkward, Shelby immediately tells Micah, I'm not about it. And
Mm-hmm.
I really feel she's trying to shut it down because she's envious. That's my personal opinion, and I will own it. But I want to know if you felt similarly at all or what else you saw.
I felt very similarly. I felt very, very, we're not debating actually. I felt kind of similarly, but, and maybe like, yes, jealous that Micah had a boyfriend, but jealous that Micah wouldn't be single anymore. And I think
Right.
sometimes we can see codependency in this way,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like,
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable for my single girlfriend to like no longer be my single girlfriend anymore. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, no, we're doing this together because she also says, I've shot down many of Micah's relationships before in the past. And
Yeah.
Micah confirmed it. She's like, she's literally ended relationships because of how she thought and what she thought. And I'm like, are you certain that your friend has your best
Your
interest at heart?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't know, girl. Like, I think that you need to kind of figure this one out.
Yes.
And I agree with how you set this up, where it's like, it's not like, it's not like Micah's friends were trying to actually get to know Paul.
No.
They weren't like, yeah, like just like you said, they're not even asking like, what do you do for work? That's so interesting. You love plants. Do you have a favorite plant? They're not trying to get to know him. They're trying to set him up for failure. And Micah, who's probably very familiar with that dynamic, but not familiar in the way where she's going to call her friend out on it.
Mm-hmm.
Familiar as in she's comfortable with it,
Yeah.
doesn't recognize that this is actually really uncomfortable, inappropriate, and pretty embarrassing for Paul, who is the outlier of the situation.
I
He's the
know.
brand new person.
And y'all aren't
He
making
his
me feel safe at all.
No, and that's why he stood up for himself, why he was like,
Yeah,
well, I don't
good for
really care what
him.
she thinks. Yeah, and I understand that some people could hear that and be like, oh, that was kind of rude, and but it was actually an effort to like
Be like, can
like
you get off
you
my back?
yeah, like hop off my dick. Like
For
you don't know
real.
me.
No.
Yeah, it was just it was really intense. And but it makes sense that because he would have some sort of reaction, he kind of walked into a bad situation. They set him up for failure. He had a
I
reaction to the way
know.
that they set him
Yeah.
up. And then her friends get to go to Micah and say, I didn't like how he treated us. I don't
Yeah,
like how he
it's a
treats you.
version of reactive abuse. It's like so
Yeah.
slimy and icky. It's like, let me
Yeah.
make fun of you and cut you down. And then when you decide that I'm hurt your feelings, I'm going to then use that against you. Like, you're not man enough
Right.
because I said some shit. And it's
Right.
like, fuck that. Like, humans are humans are humans are humans. We all have emotions. All of us can get our feelings hurt by things, whether they were intentionally said or unintentionally said. And it's like, when we are establishing relationships, I personally believe like it is our, especially when we're introducing a partner to a friend group or a family group or whatever, like it is it is very healthy and it is very what's the word, bonding, to like make sure and prioritize your partner feels safe in this environment that you are bringing them into. And Micah
Mm.
didn't do that for Paul in the slightest. Like, it
Hmm.
was very much like us girls against you, and let's see how you
Hmm.
handle it. And it's like,
Hmm.
I'm so over this idea that like it's funny to haze our partners into these situations. It is
Hmm.
actually detrimental to so many relationships because now the foundation that's been established, let's say Paul and Micah do work out and they get married, the foundation that's been established now with this friend group plus Micah and Paul is that Paul is not safe. He's on the outs. And that has now set the precedent for potential, if this doesn't get a conversation, if this doesn't get the attention it needs to, where like we got to cut this out because this isn't okay, it's going to erode their relationship.
Hmm.
So
Period.
yeah,
Period.
fuck. All right,
I
moving
have
on.
nothing else to say about it.
I
Yeah.
know it's
Hmm.
so bad. All right.
It was bad.
So Brett and
Wait,
oh,
before we hop off Micah and Paul, anything to add from Paul meeting Micah's parents?
oh, I think Micah's parents had a more like curious reaction than Paul's mom.
Mm.
I think it was a little bit more grounded in reality.
There's
Um,
also a little bit of over identifying as well, though, because
Paul.
Paul's Micah's dad is also named Paul, and he was like, "Your name's Paul, so good with me." And I'm like,
Yeah.
seek a little more.
I know. I feel like they were trying to use that as like a haha, let's break the tension that we feel.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, they and I get this. Like, what else are her parents going to say other than like, well, we support it because we know our daughter? Like,
I thought it was
I
interesting that she didn't tell them until that moment.
yeah, like you didn't have a phone call, but maybe to each their own. Like I feel like what we see with like Kwame and what he's navigating, and like
Yeah.
Chelsea also didn't tell her father. So maybe it's just one of those things where like everyone has a
Yeah.
preference on like what conversations they have in person and what
Totally.
conversations they have over the phone. But I'm with you. Like I would like I mean, assuming I had a family that I would be it but I would because I wouldn't want the jaw to hit the floor. I would want to like emotionally prepare them for what they were walking into. This
You
is
know
my
what?
2 cents though.
You're totally right. And I really appreciate that perspective because everyone's going to have a different gauge of what an appropriate timeline and how to share that news with their families would be. I guess the thing that put me off a little, it was the nonchalantness, the intentional nonchalantness of
Right.
Micah's delivery that felt a
I
little bit
agree with
like
that.
this is just immediately a joke. And
Right.
I understand humor is a defense mechanism. Obviously, this is an awkward and uncomfortable kind of moment and very unusual. Um, and I do think that when you introduce something in your world to other people as a joke, they're going to think of it as a joke.
Yeah, that's a great point because again, you're setting the precedent. It's like, you know what I mean? Like there
Hmm.
I yeah, I'm at a
Yeah,
loss for words. We're just going to
that's
let
it.
it lie. But it is
Yeah,
it's really sad that I feel Micah is so tee hee ha ha about the whole thing. And then when Paul is trying to assert himself, she's like not about it. And it's like he's allowed to have an opinion.
right,
He's allowed to have a preference. He's allowed to have a
right.
voice. Stop trying to
Okay,
take that away from
we
him.
do have to talk about this. When she went to his apartment and she saw it for the first time, obviously she's like not happy with the aesthetics, and I get it. I've walked into many a man's home. It's rough. It is rough in these streets. And it's still not appropriate to like make them feel like shit for doing the best that they can to like create like a homey environment in their
I really
space.
didn't think his place was that bad. Like I was
No,
like, okay, cool, you're
I
into
know.
knives. Like, all right, you're one of those guys. That's okay. Like, we can get over it. K bar
That's
here,
so
there,
funny.
whatever.
Yeah, I think that like effort was at least made. Like, okay, so
Yeah,
it doesn't meet your Pinterest board
I know.
expectations, but it
Right.
was never going to. And this is what this man did for himself. It's just like whatever. Um, but it was when they started to talk about where they could be living together that I thought was really interesting because and this was the first time that I think we as an audience even had any access to this conversation, which
Yeah.
I was like, I feel
Where
like I'm
has this
catching the,
conversation been? Yeah.
yeah, I feel like I'm walking in the middle of, I didn't even know Micah was from Arizona, that she had a
I know.
property in Arizona.
I was so
So
confused because, and same with Kwame being in Portland. I'm like, I thought we were in fucking Seattle. So is this like a
yeah,
Seattle nearby area? Which I don't feel
kind
like
of.
Arizona is not that close to Seattle.
No, it's not. I think that she splits her time in Seattle.
Okay.
So she
This
has,
is
I
why
think
we
she
need
rents.
more of this conversation. I am
I
confused.
know. No, I'm glad you were confused because I was also confused and I was like, was I not paying attention? And then I was like, no, I was paying attention. So Micah has, I think it's for work. She splits her time in Seattle and owns a property in Arizona. And again, although I'm only picking this via context clues because not like the show is ever going to let me hear it, but
I know.
I think that Micah prefers Arizona. And I think that she sees her life in Arizona home base long term.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, if I'm wrong, Netflix, please correct me
Yeah.
because I
For real.
don't know. I'm drawn.
It's not our fault.
Yeah, yeah, don't blame me. And so it seems like Mike is very certain that that's what she wants.
Yeah.
And Paul's desire to like even talk about this more about the idea of like having home base be in Seattle is actually not really being super considered.
No.
Or rather
I she's
she's
like
wanting
he's
more from him.
yeah, he's like no, like I'm not about it, and she's like I want you to at least try because if you don't try I'll be upset. But I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I don't believe her when she says that. I think he could even try, and when he still says no, she'll be like still upset with him.
Yeah,
um
totally.
I think a lot of people say that, like, I at least want you to try. If you at least try, I won't be upset. And I think there's people who actually mean that and they see their partner try and give the grace if their partner is like, nah, sorry, like, this isn't for me. And I do think there's a
Mm,
lot of people that say it and don't actually mean it. And I have a feeling Mike was one of those people. Now,
yeah.
riddle me this one, Batman. Why the fuck didn't they talk about this while they were in the pods before they got engaged? Like,
I
I
don't
don't
know.
understand. It's like you guys are, they say, and we've heard a lot, like, they've talked about, like, you're in the pods, you're talking for hours, and it's like how do you not discuss how you want to handle these things, especially like if you know and you're having exclusivity in the pods? Why aren't these conversations coming up? Right? Why are we whipping guitars out and singing to each other when we haven't even discussed like how, where we want to spend our time? Right? Like, it's
Hmm.
just like, and especially because of the context of this show is a proposal and a marriage, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's like,
Mm,
why are you already engaged and now trying to work backwards by having these conversations?
hmm.
Because if Paul is a hard no, like, I am in Seattle, period, like, I'm not going to go to Arizona with you when you go to Arizona, and I'm going to stay here. And if that's really an issue for Micah, that's the end of their relationship right there. Right?
I feel the same way about Chelsea and Kwame.
Same. For real. So
We'll
it's
get
just
there.
like, I don't understand. I don't understand. Okay, I want to jump over
Yeah.
to Brett and Tiffany. Let's sprinkle
Okay.
in some good.
I loved seeing Brett's place. Actually, take back what I said about being join like stepping into many
Yeah, there's
amends.
some men who are super organized and clean. I've dated a guy like that before, and it's like, if I'm being honest, I literally was like, "Fuck, is this like a Dexter type?" Like, I was like, it's
Yeah,
almost too
a
clean.
little
Like
too
yeah,
clean.
yeah,
No, I think he's a tech guy. He's a tech guy, and it makes sense. He shares your love of the iRobot. Um,
hell yeah,
the little
the
yeah,
crazy
the little Roomba guy.
robot Batman.
I think he's just like a tech guy that's looking to make his life as convenient as possible through technology
Yeah,
and has a lot of stuff in his home to support it. It's
yeah,
so funny going into
I
tech
loved it.
people's homes. I thought
Yeah.
it was cute. I do have some like memories of being sometimes going into a tech person's home means they walk you around their entire house pointing out all of their gadgets and I'm like I stopped caring like
The
3
second they
gadgets
open the
in.
door. Yeah.
Yeah, like I like cool man. You can do a light show. Okay. I got it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
yeah. I
I
love that
definitely
for you. If you
feel,
like it, I love it.
yeah, exactly. I feel like I'm definitely, when guys go off on a tangent about things that they love, I think it's really cute. I'm like, it just looks like
Yeah,
you're like
totally.
in a candy store. But my biggest thing that I saw of Brett's where I was like, this is a little much for me, but like, hey, if this is the individual shoe cases.
Shoot.
I was like, damn, bro, like no dust is getting on them sneakers. Like, it was cute. It was cute.
That's a
Um,
sneakerhead for real.
but I loved it. I my exact notes were, okay, my guy. Dot dot dot. It's like
Mhm.
he's really put together. I love it. Here's what I
I love
loved.
that. I love that Tiffany
Yeah.
calls him Bougie Brett.
Bougie bread. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What did
it's
you love?
what I loved about him showing her his space and Tiffany getting curious was when he was like, do you want to move in here? And she was like, well, like, where am I going to have a desk space? Where am I going to have this? I loved that Brett immediately was just like, okay, I hear the need for more space. And without him taking it personally, because he's just like, I love that he could stay logical with her. Because instead
Mm,
of it being this personal attack, like your place is small, he's not interpreting it this way, which many people could, right? As like a judgment.
mm,
And instead,
mhm.
he is like, switches into problem solving mode and is like, well, what about the building? Like, all of the apartments look like this. So, like, we could get a 2 or 3 bedroom. And she was like, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like, I'm excited to live here. And that like squashed the trepidation around the conversation of like, is my apartment not good enough? It's more just like,
Mm.
here's how I live, this is where I live, what are your thoughts? If you like this kind of vibe, we can move into a different unit here. Like, it just felt really mature and like grounded in like logistics instead of this like being a personal thing, you know what I mean?
Well, you wanna know why? It's because they actually are considering each other when they're,
Yeah.
like, delivering hard information.
Imagine that.
Like,
Yeah.
I know, like, they're trying like, Tiffany's trying to be truthful while also being considerate of Brett's feelings.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, just to compare for a moment, since we were just talking about Micah and Paul, like, Micah's not really doing that. She's not going into Paul's apartment and being um like this is like you really created like a nice space for yourself. And she did say, she goes like, this is such a reflection of you, like I'd know that this was your place, but it felt a little bit more like a put down instead of like, I can totally see like you
Paul in
in this
here. Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this space would eventually be for me because it doesn't really feel like me. It doesn't feel like us in combination.
Right.
And so like there's other ways to deliver that information of to say like I don't want to live here. Um
Yeah.
but you'd have to care how that information is received by your partner who hopefully you
Yeah.
give a shit about how they feel about stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So later that night, or I'm assuming later that night, and the next time we see Brett and Tiffany, she's cooking for him. And they get into a conversation around like how they spend their money. And I really want to talk about this because I thought this was like, there were some
Me
yellow
too.
flags that ended up becoming green, but I was like, this could
Yeah.
go either way right now.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
so yeah, so she asks if he feels overextended and he says no. And she starts to inquire because she doesn't believe him when he says no. And she's like, are you sure? Because like I saw the brands you wear in your closet, like is what she's kind of hinting at. And so then she starts to ask like, what's the most money you've spent on a single item? And I thought that that was a little like
A little
again, like
invasive.
it was a little invasive. And not only that, like at the end of the day, this, and she eventually gets here, but at the end of the day, it's like, if he makes more money than you and can fucking afford to spend that much money on the item without it hurting the ability to pay his bills, let him fucking spend his money on whatever the fuck he wants to spend his money on. So I
Yeah.
felt like this question isn't a fair question to ask because everything's relative. And like, just because he ends up talking about like he bought a $1,200 piece of luggage and she was like, what? No way. Like, gobsmacked by that. Because in her
Mm,
mind, first of all, there's two things at play here. One, you all have different budgets. Like, what Brett can afford is clearly different than what Tiffany can afford to like have an expendable cash type purchase, right? And at the same time, people can also value their money differently. Like, I'm sure there's millionaires out there that wouldn't spend $1,200 on a piece of luggage, and that's fine, right? So
yeah.
it's like I I'm glad that as this conversation went on, because I was a little like, I was on the edge of my seat, like waiting for this to turn into a fight, because I'm like, really, like, neither of them have a right to tell the other person what they should or shouldn't spend their money on. The only time that conversation is imperative to have is if you're like
Joining
overextended. If you're not able to
finances.
pay your bill, yeah, if you're not able
Mm.
to pay your bills and you're spending money on other things, is that the responsible thing to do? And the answer is no, right? So
Well, and
in
it
the
may
end,
not even just be about bills, because even when Tiffany said, she's like, hey, listen, as long as you get your bills paid, which I understand what she was saying. She's
exactly.
like, you know how to move your money. But when it
Yeah.
comes to it, like couples and like building together, it's like a lot of times it's also like, what are we building towards? Because like these
Right.
finances are going to support some other
Aspect
stage
of
of our
something.
lives,
Yeah.
whether it's like growing our
Kids,
family, maybe
retirement.
it's yeah, yeah, exactly, like vacations, like what kind of life. And I do think that like you could be with the best person for you as like an individual, and if you can't get on some sort of a working page. You don't have to spend money the same way, but you have to get sort
No.
of on the same. I think couples get that confused. They're like, they should spend money the way that I spend money because the way I spend money and the way that I
Exactly.
save money is right. We see this all the time. And it's like, no, well, theirs is right and yours is right, but them both being right together is probably not going to get you to your financial goals. What are your financial goals and how do we each individually need to make changes to get there?
To contribute.
Kind of like the
Yeah.
same thing that we're like doing with every other part of our relationship challenges.
That's and this is the thing is like people get it's really not money and like having a conversation about money or
Mm,
sex or children or boundaries.
mm,
It's not the topic, it's the emotions we
mm,
associate with the topic as a reflection of ourselves. Right? So it's like if you feel a lot of shame, like I'm not allowed to have money or I'm not allowed to spend money or I'm not allowed to receive money, like and there's these unresolved wounds in the subconscious mind that is going to make these conversations that much harder because you get more and more uncomfortable, aka dysregulated. And so this is what then causes these types of conversations to blow up. Whereas like we saw with Brett and Tiffany how easy a conversation around money can be, right? Did it get a little uncomfortable in there? Yeah, because she was asking some pretty like again, questions that were invasive and in my mind like weren't the best questions to ask. I feel she could have with different language like she could have gotten to the same end result of the conversation, but all that matters is this conversation worked for these two people. And Brett brought it up and was like, I think Brett really gets what Tiffany's trying to say a lot of the time.
yeah.
I think he's
Mm-hmm.
really intuitively like connected with her that way. So when he's asked that question, he's not triggered by it because he understands what she's trying to get at. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so he can kind of
Yes.
get ahead of it instead of it to him taking it personally, like she's coming at me for the money I spend on my luggage. Like, you know what I mean? Like he doesn't go there. And I fucking
Yeah.
love that about him. And the other thing I love
Yeah.
about Brett, I'm going to move on to the next conversation where I want to give him another red flag because this was probably the sexiest thing I've heard him say the entire
Ye-
time. Yeah.
Ooh.
You ready
Yeah.
for it?
I am,
Yeah,
ma'am.
cake.
Okay.
um, but actual cake. You guys get your minds out of the
Yeah.
gutter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they go for a walk and Tiffany kind of starts like, all right, like wedding's in 2 weeks. We have a lot to plan. We got to figure out a cake. I got to get a dress. We have to get people here. And Brett, in the sexiest, calmest way, was like, yeah, it's a lot. Well, let's tackle one thing at a time. Cake. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yes, like yes,
Mm-hmm.
because you can see how Tiffany is a little like
She's up.
anxious in her energy. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like down here and is like, yeah, I hear you. That's a lot. So,
But he still
cake.
validated her. He
Yes,
validated her. He's
exactly.
like, yes, that it, instead of being like, whoa, 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 you're getting stressed out over nothing. Nothing's happened yet.
Yes,
That would
exactly.
have been some other response. And instead, he
Yeah.
was like, that is a lot. The first thing I heard was cake. What are we going to do
What's
about
different?
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
loved that. I was like, you're hot. Like that was so
Yeah.
sexy.
It just seems like he's really ready to be in a partnership with
Yeah.
someone
Yes.
and actually like have difficult conversations because this stuff is normal, you guys. Like the anxiety and the
Hmm.
differences of financial spending and the coming from different backgrounds, different upbringings as far as how money is used, like where you want to live, how many sneakers you have, what your storage looks like how much tech you want in your home. Like it's normal to be on different pages about a lot of these things, but they continue to give us little uh like golden nuggets of like how with a little bit of finesse and ease they kind of meet each other in the middle of these conversations. And then what you find like in this conversation about cake, afterwards they find themselves reconnecting.
Yeah.
Tiffany's more regulated. Brett feels like he's got her sort of back on the ground. They regulate or they
Yeah.
co-regulate and then
Yeah.
they do smooches. They do
Yeah.
kissing.
And I would venture to guess that they actually are then able to produce something and resolve the problem because now they
Mhm.
are co-regulated and they're in it together instead of it being like Tiffany feeling like I'm trying to do all this on my own and Brett could care less because he's not as anxious about it, right? I think a
Mhm.
lot of women interpret a lack of anxiety from their partner and like means a lack of care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
if Tiffany wasn't as emotionally mature as she is in this scene, we could have seen her be like interpreted that way. Like I feel like Brett doesn't care. Like he only wants to talk about cake. I listed 10 things that we need to focus on. And I'm so glad she didn't go there. She was just like, yeah, okay, one thing at a time,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's open to influence with him in the best way. It's so sweet to watch them. They're growing
Yeah.
on me.
Yeah, I think that because they started out kind of boring, it's like you don't see much
I
of
know.
them, but I want to see more of them, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think that we will because I feel pretty confident that they're going to get married and that's like not going to
Yeah.
be a question. Why wouldn't they
Yeah.
get married?
Yeah. So far they're definitely the only two saying yes at the altar in my opinion. I really don't think anyone else
Really?
is going to say yes. No.
We're going to find out.
I know. I'm
I
ready
think
to
other
be wrong.
people will.
Let me say it like this. Maybe they're the only people who should say yes at their wedding.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I definitely co-sign that. Okay. Let's
Where are we
talk
going
about
next?
Kwame and Chelsea because I do want to say similar to my issue with Micah, I actually had a bigger issue with Chelsea in this conversation.
Ooh, I
Like,
can't wait to hear.
yeah, because okay, we see Kwame make a phone call to his mom to try to talk about their this relationship, how it's unfolding, their plans for marriage, yada yada yada. Chelsea, at her best effort to try to be supportive, she was like, "Hey, I would love to be part of that conversation." He's like, "Hey,
Not the
sorry, I just
time.
keep looking. I keep looking at my my fence doors are shitty and they keep blowing open because there's like tornado watches out here. Um, so I'm getting distracted by it. But anyway, they are she does her best job to try to be supportive, but Kwame's like, actually, this is a conversation that I definitely need to have with my mom alone to start. Like, I want you to be part of it, but it'd have to come a little bit later. And then Chelsea hears that boundary, which is good. She backs off. She goes into another room while he calls her. Kwame calls her. It doesn't really go well. He comes out. He recaps. He's like, she's not really that supportive. This is really tough. My mom and I have always been really close. This has been really hard. It's hard for me. Then he sort of starts talking about his life in Portland because they're currently in his apartment in Portland to get some of his stuff. And while again, Kwame's home is definitely not on a Pinterest board anywhere, at least without irony. He is like, he clearly has made a life for himself where he is. I think it's interesting because for Chelsea, it's just a no brainer in her mind. She's like, I will be living in Seattle. My parents are there. I will be in Seattle. That's where my family is. That's where my life is. And also, I understand she works in person. So, like, that's where her job is. And understand she's a speech pathologist. She's not willing to leave, not at this time. And I want people to keep in mind that just because they might not have family in the city where they live in doesn't make it easier or like more attractive to like leave where they are. Kwame
Mm,
clearly has a bit of a routine and like a social network there. He says he like plays soccer with people in the community. Like he's got friends there. That is difficult to leave depending on the quality of those relationships, especially if
yeah.
your family is distant. That it's essentially like you're asking your partner to just be comfortable and not even have like a shred of a conversation about the fact that that might be hard for him.
Yeah.
I
I
didn't love
agree.
that.
Me neither. Yeah, I felt this was an opportunity for her to take the time to validate him and get curious about the emotions coming up for him and let him emote about just what he's processing, what he's thinking about, how he's feeling. It wasn't the time to try and problem solve and when I say problem solve, which I'm putting in air quotes right now,
Hmm.
bulldozing and being like, no, we're living in Seattle,
Yeah.
period, definitively.
Mm.
I felt that that was the most invalidating and like um repelling is the word that's coming up for me, like pushing him away. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not serving her in the way that, and I think from Chelsea's mind, she's like, I need to hold this boundary. I'm holding this boundary because this is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. And simultaneously, that doesn't mean the other person isn't going to have feelings about it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of times what will benefit us is hearing out our partner's feelings. I don't think I know what will benefit the relationship as a whole better is by actually hearing them out, taking the
Mm-hmm.
time for them to feel,
Mm-hmm.
and you hold that space And then on another day where emotions aren't as charged and it's not as like open wound, have a conversation around what would it look like? What if we
Mhm.
went back and forth? What if we did like, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, 3 weeks here, 1 week there? What if we lived long distance for a period of time? How do you feel about that? Like, fuck it. Ask there in my opinion, I would rather, even if that wasn't an option for either of them, I'd rather at least explore every option on the table, even if it's something that we think might be outlandish or like
Yeah.
not feasible, because at
Yeah.
least then when you do make a decision, you've considered all everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there should just at least be a conversation. You don't have to make any commitments, just like you said, but like Chelsea's rigidness in this moment feels like just a little one-sided. Like it feels a little
Yeah.
unfair.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then later on, they're in a like a doggy spa situation for Chelsea's dog, and they start talking about the timeline of wanting to have kids. And I wanted to open this up a little bit because just while we're on the topic of Chelsea and Kwame, because um, I think this is also a conversation that they probably should have had in the pods instead of singing to each other on the guitar. Like, I really fully believe in what you said earlier, even though I know it was a joke. It's true because Chelsea wants to have kids in 3 years, which is not unreasonable. She's in her early to mid 30s. She wants children biologically. It's important for her to consider what her options are and what that timeline looks like. You can have feelings about that if you want, but it's just the fucking truth.
Yeah.
So, um, Kwame doesn't he's not opposing that reality. And I know that. I actually don't love Kwame, but I don't have a whole lot of negative feelings about him in this moment. I just feel like he wasn't I think that they weren't totally communicating on the same page. Because I think what he was trying to say is like ideally I would love to be able to enjoy our relationship a bit more and like build there before we have children because it's just going to change everything. And I think sometimes people get a little rose colored glasses when they talk about having kids in their relationship as if it's not going to change everything. And it doesn't mean that your life is inherently going to get worse, but it does mean that things will change. And anyone who has been a parent knows that that is true. It does change things. It won't change everything about you. And it doesn't mean that you're always going to lose yourself. You have to work really hard to bring back the elements of who you are as an individual, who you are as a couple. You have to make space for your relationship as a couple to continue to grow and sort of reach new heights in this new lifestyle. But yes,
Yeah.
bitch, it will fucking change things. So Chelsea sort of like, but like people with kids go travel all the time, and it's like they do, but you're not validating what he's trying to say is that that's a lot of work to do that. And he's wanting to
Yeah.
make sure, and maybe he didn't communicate this properly so that she could really hear it, but he's wanting to make sure I want this relationship to be stable enough for us to be able to do all of that. All
Yeah,
of that of which you
absolutely.
see, I want to do it, but I want us to feel like we're good first.
I definitely feel Chelsea's looking at the idea of traveling with a child with rose colored glasses. It's like, girl, that's another 10 to 30 pounds as the child grows that is strapped to your tummy because she's like, just put them in a front pack and you walk around. They don't really do anything. And it's like, they're going to be shitting themselves at times when it's not convenient for you. They're going to want to eat at times when it's not convenient for you. Like, what if they're screaming and crying on the plane? Like, there's so many things. How are you guys going to take the time to tag team it and figure it out on like who's taking this crying session, who's taking this
Oh
diaper
my
session, who's taking this like there's so much, all while you're trying to like enjoy the sights of, I don't know, I'm going to say Amsterdam because that's where you and I are going, but after
God.
Mexico. But
Mhm,
like,
mhm.
yeah, it's just like I didn't, yeah. Here are the other things. I kind of want to get specific on two things that
Yeah.
Chelsea said to Kwame that I really didn't like. And I see this happen way often in so many different
Yes.
facets of life, not just relationships. And I'm here to say we need to stop doing this to each other because it's disgusting.
Mhm,
And it's a
mhm.
sarcastic comment. Um, where I mean, I don't it's sarcastic, but I think it's been so normalized that people don't hear it as sarcastic. So
Mm.
Kwame brings up the fact that he's compromising a lot. He's like, I'm compromising moving to Seattle. I'm compromising. Now we're talking babies, and this is a compromise. And so he starts to say, like, I'm kind of compromising a lot. And he says it in that way. Like, he was kind of emotional about it. He's like, I'm kind of compromising a lot here, babe. And she was like, welcome to marriage. And I hated that. I thought that was
Yeah.
the most invalidating, shutting down, like low-key gaslighting in a way, and it's not
Hmm.
helpful. It's not a helpful
Hmm.
comment. People will say this, like maybe it's their first corporate job and they're like, yeah, I'm just working so much overtime, and they're like, well, welcome to corporate America.
Yeah,
Like,
totally. It's
do you
so
see what I mean?
invalidating. And also
It's
it's
like
normalizing a lot of really shitty patterns.
things. Exactly. It's like, why? Like, no, no. Just because that might have been the case before doesn't mean that needs to be the case for us right
Mm,
now in this moment.
mhm,
Just because,
mhm.
toxic habits have been normalized in corporate workplaces doesn't mean that that needs to be the standard for every corporation. Okay? So that's
Yeah.
one bucket. But going back to relationships, it's like, saying things like, well, welcome to marriage, welcome to a relationship, welcome to parenthood. That's another thing too. Like, welcome to being a mom. It's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't serve us and it does not serve our relationships. It is the most alienating comment that three words that you can say to someone to shut down their emotions. And I'm here
Mm.
to say we need to fucking put it down because it's
Yeah, that's so
disgusting.
interesting. It's
Yeah.
so interesting. And then he because he feels this way and he is isolated now, he doesn't really feel like he can talk to his partner about how he
Yeah.
feels about it because she shut him down. We see, and I don't want to get into the party yet because I like
No.
there's so many players involved. We'll just tackle that at the end. But I do want to say that Kwame's having a conversation with someone else. I don't even remember who, but like a neutral party, like another guy, and he's talking about how he compromises a lot. And or maybe this happened with Micah, and if it did, like, it shouldn't have happened. He's compromising a lot um in a lot of his relationships, and he's worried about being like uh
Tiffany.
taken advantage. Oh, okay. He's worrying about being taken advantage, and I understand what it feels like to be in that role and to feel like every relationship that I get into, I compromise and blah blah blah. But once you become aware of that pattern, which I'm sure definitely exists for lots of reasons, it's not going to serve you to be like, I've now just realized that I'm always compromising, so now I am no longer going to compromise from this point forward anymore because I have recognized what the pattern is.
Yeah.
It's like
So now I'm
you
rigid.
like yeah, it's like, don't just pick this battle because it you now notice how this affects like your ego and like how you feel about yourself. It's like
Hmm.
you're going to be compromising on stuff, but like maybe find the things that you want to actually be compromising on, not like
Yeah.
be choosy.
Exactly. We all have our things. Like everyone, I have a girlfriend who there's one sexual act where she's like, I will not do that. I won't do that ever because she has
Mm,
sexual
mhm.
trauma, and for her it's something that's like, that is not
It's a
something that I'm willing to
non-starter.
do. Yeah. And so like she's happily engaged and she's found a partner who doesn't need that in their sex life. But it's like, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a difference between like being rigid with something because of not feeling safe and being rigid with something for the sake of being rigid, when
Mm,
it's not coming from a place of like intentionality. It's just
mm,
coming from a
mhm.
place of like, I refuse. And it's gonna fuck Kwame up because it's impossible to be in a relationship without any form of compromise. Like, y'all are two different human beings that are going to prefer different things and ways about going those things, doing and saying those things or whatever. So really what needs to happen here is, again, a conversation around options,
Yeah,
opportunities,
yeah.
what's viable, what's not. Yeah, and I think Kwame doesn't, like, I mean, after what we saw with Chelsea, I don't think he feels safe to fully open up about what he's feeling and talk about options. I think he's just kind of like starting to like go internal and be like, all right, I'm going to shut down because like it's Chelsea's way. Yeah. So
I
we'll see
liked
what
I
ends up
liked
happening.
Tiffany's response where she was just sort of like, listen, you got to get clear on what you want. and
Yeah.
figure out
Yeah.
what's going on for
And
you.
that's our responsibility. Like it's my responsibility to know like what are deal breaker boundaries? Like very
Mm,
similar to what I shared with my friend, like that's a deal breaker boundary for her because of her experience. And then like what are the things I'm more open and flexible on? And it's not my partner's job to figure that out for me or my friends, it's me. And so sitting with like what would I feel if this was the case, how would I approach this, and just sitting with those and being honest with yourself, again being honest with yourself, is the best thought exercise you can do for these kinds of situations.
totally.
All right, so next, moving
Next,
to Zach
and Bliss,
and Blissy Bliss. Yeah, I'm gonna
who
adjust my
have
commercial for the end.
they have a cutie. They have a very cute date where he cooks her dinner at his apartment,
Yeah,
and Bliss came here in the red two piece. I was like, oh, she's turning up the volume.
yeah. She's like, "Come at me, baby."
Yeah. And she's still guarded, and I still get it. Um, I thought that like I thought it was kind of funny and cute that Zach like absolutely fucked up he was trying to like
Sous
cook
vide steak.
steak. Yeah, sous vide steak, and he totally boofed it. And it was I thought it was like interesting to be able to see him like handle the stress of that and see where the two of them were at
Yeah,
together. The thing that I struggle with Bliss in this moment at least is like her sarcasm is hard to read.
yeah,
What
yeah.
did you think?
She's very dry. I agree. There was the thing about the thing about Irina continuing to come up is what's bothering me here with her.
Mm.
Because she starts to say like I have to give you a hard time still because it's not normal to hang out with someone who proposed to another girl and dumped you. And
Like nothing, none of
I
this is normal.
none of it's normal, and I disagree. It's
Mm.
not Zach's responsibility right now to make her like to pay penance for what he's done, basically, is like
Mm,
what
hmm.
she's trying to do here with this comment, because she keeps bringing it up.
Yeah.
Like every time I see them together, she brings it up in some way. And it's like, you need to process the emotions that you're still harboring, the anger and the pain and sadness from being dumped and him proposing to Irina. Because the reason these comments keep coming out is those emotions haven't been fully processed. And she's trying to soothe herself by poking at Zach with these comments to make him like overly validate and affirm her. And it's not emotionally mature. And if she doesn't resolve her feelings and actually process them and move on, she's going to continue to bring this up. And it's not something that Zach can change. Like, he can't go
Hmm.
back in time and do it all over again. So what needs
Hmm.
to happen? Like, if I was working with Bliss, I'd be curious here. I'd be like, what are you looking for? What do you need? Like, in a perfect world, if you could wave a wand,
Hmm.
like, what would Zach say or do that makes this go away?
Hmm.
Because it's not like,
Yeah.
it's you. Like, she needs to
Yeah.
process. She's fucking angry and she's hurt and
Right.
she has every right to be. But holding it over your now fiance, because they end up getting engaged here, like holding it over his head about something he's done in the past is only going to beat him down and make him feel less and less safe with you. So I'm a little nervous here.
Well, and like, and then what it sort of sets the tone for is that he has to be this bending over backwards, will always try to make this up to you version of himself, which
Yeah.
some of that is within him, but it's not who he is authentically
Well,
24/7.
and nor should it be. Like, if they're going to be
Yeah.
married and spend the rest of their lives together, does he really want to sign up for 40 years of trying to make it up to her that one
Right.
instant?
Totally.
Like, no,
I
you
agree with
know?
what you're saying, where she's angry and she's upset. So I think naturally it's coming up for her when she's hanging out with him. And she uses this just isn't normal as a justification for her being kind of an asshole. And it's just sort of like skirting blame. It's like, I'm angry and I don't know who to be angry at. So like you're here, so I'm gonna be angry at you. But that's why it's happening, because this isn't normal. And like you and like here we are, like I don't know anyone else who's been engaged to two different people
Yeah.
in the same month. Like shit like that.
I really feel this stems from a childhood situation. And here's what I mean by that is like as children, we are so conditioned to be like, Tommy pulled my hair. And then it's like we go and tattle and we expect the adult to do something to Tommy who just pulled my hair. Like you need to sit
Mhm,
time out.
mhm,
You need to blah blah blah. You need
mhm,
to be punished, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
so I really feel Bliss is bringing this up because she's trying to low key punish him. She's like, I need to keep shitting on you. And it's like, no, you don't. You don't need to.
mhm.
Please tell me in the rule book of this world where it says, if a partner does this, you must continue to shit on them. Like, no, you feel that you need to because, again, you're trying to punish him because you feel shitty and you want him to feel shitty for how he made you feel shitty. But it's like, we're not fucking three. And he's a grown ass man and you're a grown ass woman. And there's no tattletaling here that's going to get you out of your emotions. So, how are you going to sit with that? How are you going to
Yeah,
process? You know?
totally. Like if you're like, okay, she's like, I need to shit on you, like blah blah, blah, I gotta have to give it to you a little. Are you not also choosing to be here, Bliss? If you're
Yeah.
choosing to be here, then be here.
Exactly. And love him for who he is. You keep saying that it feels right and you feel connected to him. I will say, like, she vibes with his, like, nerdy, awkward self so well. Like, she really does. She leans into it. And I love that for them. And
Mhm.
at the same time, if this relationship's gonna work, you have to be that and not the let me just sock it to you. Cause, like,
Mm,
for every step forward you have, doing that is a step back. It's like, it's not producing anything.
I guess I just like want to continue to like advocate for Zach because I really feel like he gets such a bad fucking rep with these
Bro,
women.
your dinner looked delish. That coconut
I
shrimp, fuck.
know. Okay, and also like when the rest of the group finds out that Bliss and Zach are engaged, Micah's doing her like little mean girl laugh, like good luck, good luck, good luck. She's gonna need it, and I'm like,
Huh.
for why?
Yeah.
Like, what do you know that I don't know? Because I'm not
I
seeing it,
know.
but you keep teasing these clips of like, he could stay 6 feet away from me at all times, per
Yeah,
Jackie.
it's
And then
so
Micah's
it's
like, good
like
luck. And I'm like,
and I feel like out of all the guys there, like he's the most I don't want to say like put together because
normal.
there's
It's
Brett.
kind of
Brett is
normal.
also very put together, but like
Yeah, yeah,
he's fucking starting his own law firm in Seattle. Like
yeah.
yo, he has his shit together. And like, okay, so he's quirky and he's a human, but like all of us are fucking quirky, right? Like Paul with his knives, Zach with shaving his legs and his motion sensor music as you enter rooms. Like, fine, so be it. We all have our thing. I have a snitch up there. Like, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, I have random shit around my house that's quirky,
Mm-hmm.
but it brings me joy. And so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, can we just love our
Drop
partners for the
it.
things that bring them joy? Yeah,
I'm like,
like
what's quirky in my home? I have mushrooms as magnets.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mushrooms as
They look,
magnets.
they kind of look more phallic than they do mushrooms.
I love that even more. Mushrooms as magnets. Penis
Yeah,
string magnet.
kinda. Mhm.
Um yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
so they end up going on a boat date, they get engaged. The end. I don't really have much to add there.
Nah,
Do you?
whatever.
Okay. Then they move in together and that's really all we see of them.
Yeah.
All right, Jackie and Marshall.
Jackie and Marshall, we find out that there's okay, well, first Jackie meets Marshall's
Yeah.
sister, brother-in-law, and niece, which was amazing. I think Jackie, like I understood Jackie being in her feelings about everything that was going on. I understand the pressure is a lot. I think Marshall did the best that he could. Then when I think because Marshall's family is great, like his sister
Yeah.
is great,
Yeah.
and the kid and the stepbrother, like everyone was just right where they wanted to be, right where they needed to be. We support Marshall. We trust Marshall. We want to get to know you. Tell us about yourself. We see this, love it. We love you. Jackie started to relax, which was nice. And then we don't hear from them again until we see that Marshall is carrying luggage back into their shared home. So what it sounds like is they got into a fight that blew things up. And then so what ends up happening is, I guess, and again, with this season, there's a lot of like, here's some information you as the audience has to work backwards to figure out
Yeah.
what the fuck just happened. But Jackie Jackie must have been addressing the fact that they're not intimate as often as like she wants them to be. And how I think I understood this, and again, I could be wrong, but you know what, Netflix? I have to fill in the gaps, I guess. I'm working.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm guessing that that affection and intimacy are two defined by two different things for Jackie and Marshall, because Jackie's like, we're not having sex enough, and Marshall's like, I'm always trying to love up on you. I'm always touching you. I'm always caressing you. I'm always like reaching for you. And what that tells me is like, that's not what Jackie means by intimacy. And Marshall like is trying to maybe start a thing that isn't like, wires are
It's
not,
not working for her.
it's
Yeah.
not working.
Love
And there's,
languages are not being spoken here is really what is coming up. Is like, I
yeah,
want Marshall to ask, like, well, what does work for you? Because she's like, make me feel some kind of way, like seduce me. And if I was Marshall, I'd be like, can you tell me what that looks like for you? Can you give me an example? Can you show me how you want to be touched? Because it's like, we need to fucking educate and equip our partners. Like, they're not goddamn mind readers. And like, you
it's
don't need to
very,
yell at them
it's
about
very
it.
clear they didn't listen to the intro of our last episode, because if they
Yeah.
did, they would have avoided this moment, right?
All together.
Eh,
Yeah.
Altogether. Because then in comes the insults. Because Jackie, how this original fight blew up is because she's like, we don't have sex enough. She says, she's like, be a man, like man up.
Boss
Like
up. Yeah.
basically what she's saying is take me, like
Yeah.
be aggressive with me, be sexually aggressive with me to my liking, which Marshall's like, what does that mean? You know, so, but he hears not man enough, which is maybe a wound for him.
I mean,
And
I feel like anyone would
well, yeah,
just
it's
it's
upsetting.
such a yeah, icky thing. Okay, keep going.
It's
Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard. So anyway, he decides that that's his limit, whereas she, for her, didn't. I don't think so that she thought that that was a big deal. So then
Mhm.
she interprets his leaving as he can't handle this conversation. But for him, he's just sort of like, I've had it. I gotta go. They come back together, which is now what we start seeing, and they're sort of like cycling through this conversation. But they're trying to clear that up. But unfortunately, where Marshall starts to lose me is when he's saying, he's like, I saw you as a project. And I was like, oh no. Not only did I know that that wasn't going to go well, it definitely isn't cool. Before he says that, he starts talking about how, like, I know that you haven't been in relationships before. Like, this is what it is. And I'm like, homie, I what successful relationships have you been in, dude? Like, I'm not understanding where your level of expertise is at and why you need to use that to put your partner down. Like, I understand that she's not handling these conversations or these challenges in a yeah, well, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be positioning yourself as, I'm the expert because I've had X and X and X experience and I'm here to teach you. That is not cool.
Contemptuous. Yeah, for sure.
Very.
Even if it's
Yeah,
true, because like I believe Marshall is more way more emotionally mature than Jackie. Like him
sure.
being like, let me remove myself from the situation and like let's have a night to sleep. Because she came at him, like he walked in the door and she flipped immediately, and he was trying to like. What I loved about Marshall in the previous scene when she was anxious before she met his family is he was like, you know, do you need me to leave the house? Like what can I do to support you here? And then he was like, I want to talk to you, but I want to wait till you're in like a good mindset. And she's like, I'm in a good mindset now. Let's have a conversation. And it's like, clearly you're not if you're like
You're
barking
not.
at him. Right. And so
Yeah.
I love that he could see that in her. And I love that he was trying to maintain that boundary for himself because he's fucking right. Like, if we're emotional, parts of our brain go offline that we can't even think logically and perspective take. So it's like, it's very hard. It's I don't even say it's very hard. I would say it's fucking impossible if a human is in their emotions to have a okay, what do you need? How could like that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
So
totally.
I do believe that Marshall is like correct in thinking he's the more emotionally immature one, and it's a fucking, like we've said before, inside thought. Like, and you know, no one ever wants to hear that they are a project. No one ever wants to hear that. Just like no man ever wants to hear you're not man enough, or no woman ever wants to hear you're not woman enough, like you're not feminine enough. Like fuck,
Mhm,
like
mhm.
these general sayings or generic sayings are so um icky And
Mhm.
God, I use that word so much nowadays. I don't know what else. It's just such a great word.
'Cause
But
it's how you it makes you feel.
when
Yeah,
he
it's bad.
when Jackie starts being like, because she raises her voice almost the second he walks in, being like, "You didn't even want to talk to me," and he's like, "It's not that I didn't want to talk to you. I needed the space to, you know." And then he starts to meet her where she's at because he's trying to stay down here and Jackie's escalated. She's still escalated. Marshall's down here. Well, after trying to remove himself from the situation and come back and have a conversation and that still didn't work, now we start to see Marshall escalate. And that's when he
Mhm.
starts to raise his voice and say unhelpful things like, "Is this aggressive enough for you?" Which I was like, fuck, okay, yeah,
Ah,
we're five. Yeah.
yeah.
When we start saying 5-year-old things like that we would say on the playground, this is a sign that a human's dysregulated, okay? Which means you need to stop having a trying to have a conversation, people. Okay?
End it. Take a break.
But they
Take a
didn't. They
breather.
kept
Mhm.
bulldozing over each other. And then the project comment came out. And then that, of course, made Jackie upset. And then Marshall had to eat his words and be like, explain what he meant by that. And he wants to like uplift her and empower her and I love you and blah, blah, blah. And so then they just end up getting a hug.
Well, and but the hug to me was very much like Jackie kind of conceded. She like she was like he said something, he was like, "I love you." And
Yeah.
I think her relationship
That's what
with
she wanted
love
to hear.
is her
Yeah.
relationship with love is so wounded that even though he actually did disrespect her in a number of different ways in that conversation, that still broke her down, and it felt, even though no words were spoken in this moment, and I'm ad-libbing here, which I'm prepared to be wrong, but it felt like to me she was like, "Oh my god, he loves me, like I can't fuck this up." I think she sees herself as the problem a lot, and that concerns me because I think Marshall also sees her as the problem. And I'm not saying that she doesn't contribute to a lot of the toxicity in their dynamic, but like no one person is the problem. And I think I'm starting to get a sense that that's a narrative that she's familiar with within herself. And so hearing someone say, "I love you," is sort of reinforces this like, "Oh my God, don't lose this person. Like he actually loves you. Like, don't fuck this up. Don't be the one. Don't be that girl, you
Yeah.
know?" Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't like it at all because it's like, yeah, cool. You guys are gonna hug now and quote unquote repair, but I put in my notes like nothing's resolved, so this is just gonna keep happening in a cycle. So
Cut to, we go
this is
to
the epitome of a toxic relationship, guys.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then we get to, like,
of
Chelsea's
hockey.
birthday, which we've talked about everyone else, right?
Yep,
Are we good to go
we're
there?
jumping in.
So
Yep,
we
we're
get
going.
to so what we think is Marshall and Jackie have, like, kind of mended things, at least staying together, blah, blah, blah. They show up at this party alone. Marshall arrives quite much earlier than Jackie does. He's alone. You can tell that he's trying to, like, not say so much, but also, like, be honest with whoever his people are out of this group to be like, yeah,
Yeah,
like it's not a good situation. And they can tell, to be fair, because typically Marshall is so like passionate and up and positive that to see him clearly like walking with a little bit of a personal rain cloud following him is like not the vibe, not normal for him.
yeah, yeah. So, because the producers love to fuck with these people, Josh enters, and just to recap everybody, Josh is the other man that Jackie was talking to in the pods. And she chose Marshall over Josh. Josh walks in. No one likes Josh. It's very clear that nobody likes Josh. Everyone is like, let's kick this guy kicked out again. He also seems hammered and is just like really saying some inappropriate, loud things. So we know that. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I just like I hated him. His
Yeah,
behavior reminded me of like same setting, lights dimmer, everything's darker. He's like the dude who drunkenly comes up to you and is just like aggressively hitting on you and saying like the dumbest fuckboy things, trying to get your attention. And you're just like, dude, like, I don't even know who you are. I don't know what you're saying. I like kind of get the sense that I think you're attracted to me and you're trying to see what's up. But anyone who just comes up to a person we'll get into this conversation with Jackie in a moment. I'm not trying to spoil it, but like anyone who enters that conversation be like, so what's up? We're just like, what's up? I'm like, who are you?
Yeah,
This is
for
this is your other option? Who is this person? Yeah, he had to
real.
go.
I think we should just jump into that conversation because honestly, the rest of what happens at the party isn't that big of a deal. This is the only like
Yeah, there's one thing about Kwame that I want to mention, but
okay.
let's wrap up with Jackie and Josh.
And Josh, yeah, they have a really weird. He's manipulating her. He's trying to manipulate her so hard because he's like not saying anything. Like
Mm,
he's just such like pick me energy and like is saying really inappropriate negative things about Marshall, like talking shit about calling him a crybaby and like all these things. And then what I don't like about Josh, and again like sponsored by alcohol here, his conversation doesn't make sense. I literally am like, is anyone understanding this conversation? Like he's not fucking saying anything while saying a lot of things. Like
mhm.
it makes no sense. And so I have a feeling that some shit's gonna happen because we kind of leave off there on this episode with like
Yeah.
what, you know, she doesn't shut him down. You can tell she's not like wanting to say no. You can tell she's tempted there, which in
Mm.
my mind, I'm screaming at the TV being like, Marshall's definitely the better pick out of the two of them. But
And still might
God,
not be the right pick for her.
right.
But if Marshall's not the right pick for you out of these two, it's actually just neither of
Exactly. Yeah, Josh is
them.
definitely not going to be a great pick.
But
But yeah, he
I also think that he's like slimy, snaky, and not a good dude because he tried to like get in good with Marshall before this conversation with Jackie, where he's just like trying to be like,
just
we're
listen a
good.
little.
Yeah.
And then
And
he
then
calls himself that.
yeah, and then he goes to Jackie and he shit talks him. Like
Yeah.
it nothing about him is actually that appealing. And
Walking red flag.
I actually felt like he's one of those folks that, like, due to probably a lot of insecurities, whatever they are, unclear to me, when he's in a social situation, he puts his persona, his public persona, on full volume, which is why I was so annoyed by him.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
It's not attractive behavior because you can feel that. Like someone who's genuinely the life of the party, like someone who could walk in a room and be like, "Oh my god, hey." And like it's only coming from a place of like love and like like how they be. You can
Yeah.
feel that and it's like everyone ebbs and flows around that, but someone who's like pick me energy, like I need to but like be the life of the party to like self numb, right? Like medicate here. You can pick up on the sense that it's like it's not coming from a genuine place. And you see how everyone reacts to that. And they're like,
Hmm.
they collectively don't like Josh. And the reason is because of the energy he carries with him
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
behaviors that that fuels. Yeah. So we'll see what ends up happening there. All
Yeah.
right.
Okay. The only
Kwame,
thing that I wanted to
what
say
about
about
him?
Kwame is because he's talking to Micah um, again, which like doesn't surprise me at all. Like I really think that Micah doesn't check her need for validation from whoever
Anybody.
is significant to her to be able to provide that. And Kwame also like is continuously he's annoying because he's attracted to her and he keeps sort of like he's downplaying that he wants to continue to stay connected to her. He's trying to convince himself, Chelsea, and everyone else that he's like got it on lock. But really, you see him lean into her every time and I don't mean physically lean into her. I think like energetically, like he has no emotional boundaries when it comes to
Oh
Micah
yeah.
for some
No.
weird reason. But the thing that bothered me, and it is just so classic to me in general for people, is in an interview, he's like, talking to Micah is just so easy. Things are just really easy with her. And I'm like, yeah, because you're not in a fucking relationship. This is
Exactly.
you. We have to stop comparing the very loose, infrequent connections that we have with sexy people, people that we are attracted to, compared to our actual dynamic and challenging relationships with either our
Yeah.
current partner or past partners. it's this romanticization of this person's a better fit because every time we talk, it's just so easy. Yeah, you're not actually talking about real stuff. You're not
No.
in the position to have a conversation of, are we going to live in Seattle or are we going to live in Arizona? Because honestly, Kwame and Micah, if you get together, you're going to be in the same fucking situation that the two of you
For
are
real.
actually in with different people.
Yep. That's right.
And
And
guess
it
what's not easy anymore? That one.
exactly. I see this happen so fucking much where like people are in relationships and put someone that they've like had a great conversation with on a pedestal and they start fantasizing like, well, maybe if I was with them, this would be like this and this would be like that. And it's like, yo, bros, peoples, everybody who listens to this, let's spit some facts right here. Relationships are fucking hard no matter who you're with because it's two imperfect humans trying to come together and be around each other all the goddamn time. And it's like,
Mm,
we're going to have days that are hard. We're going to have days that are great. We're going to have preferences where I want it one way and you want it a different way, and that's going to grind our gears. And you know what? Relationships only work because the loving part of the relationship becomes a fucking choice, not something you just feel on an emotional high because you're out with a couple tequilas in your system and this person looks cute in this light and we're talking about, our favorite show on Netflix, and which in this case hopefully is not Love is Blind.
yeah.
And now all of a sudden we're thinking that like this person's the best thing since sliced bread and they're such a better fit for me. And it's like, no, you think that because you're literally trying to put someone who isn't in a relationship, like you're comparing apples to oranges. It's not the same fucking thing.
Yeah.
So it really pisses me off. I see it happen way too often.
I know. It's also like, come on, let's use our critical thinking skills because we have them and think about this. Why might this connection feel easier than the other one that I'm currently battling? Maybe because we actually don't have to work together on anything. And every time we come together, there's alcohol and it's a good time and we look nice and we smell good. And we were just validated by our partners from the other room. It's just like, dude, whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
That's it.
What are we ditching?
We're ditching. We are ditching. We are
I'm
ditching.
ditching
I'm going to,
that.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's ditch that.
I want to ditch that. I want to like if you are a grown ass adult and you're in a relationship where your mindset around that relationship is longevity, it's like long-term partnership, be emotionally mature and understand that the friends that you have that might have a fun little combo here and there, or the random person you meet out while you're out on a girls' night or a guy's night, and now you start thinking these things, remind yourself of this conversation. Don't compare apples to oranges. The reason it's
Yeah.
challenging with your partner is because you actually have to face life together
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
continue to face life together if that's really what you desire. And if you don't and you're over that person, leave the relationship, but don't
Get
pull a
out.
Kwame and cross
Yeah.
toe the line of flirting.
Oh my God. It's really bad.
Yeah.
Okay. I am ditching uh putting our partners down because we have
Mm,
unresolved feelings about
yeah.
stuff that our partners actually can't help us with. And
Yeah.
I'm specifically talking to Bliss, but I'm also kind of talking to Jackie, and I'm also kind of talking to Marshall, and I'm kind of talking to everyone because there's a
Yeah.
lot of that going
A
on.
lot of it.
So, if you are putting your partner down and you find yourself sort of doing it a bit more frequently than the other parts of you maybe would like and feel good about, get curious about that part of yourself because it's usually indicative of like a something that hasn't really been scratched, touched, addressed, identified. That's all.
Exactly. That's it. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. If you liked us, leave us a rating or a review wherever you're listening to us. Drop us some stars. If you're not yet, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Ditch the Script Pod. And if you have a question that you want us to answer, head to our website, ditchthescriptpod.com, to submit your question there. And for those of you who may need additional support and you want a free 30-minute session, head to our website, ditchthescriptpod.com/podcast, to apply to hang out with us. All right, that's it.
Yeah. Sayonara.
Bye.